Nitric oxide boosters. The pump is the entire reason half the ingredients in your tub exist. That tight, full, veiny feeling in your arms halfway through a set, the one that has you inventing reasons to walk past a mirror. A whole category of pre-workout ingredients chases nothing but that, and they get grouped together as nitric oxide boosters. Nitric oxide relaxes your blood vessels, they open wider, more blood floods into the muscle, and everything swells up. More blood also means more oxygen and nutrients arriving while you train, which is the part that helps you perform rather than just the part you admire in the mirror. And the ingredient with the most obvious name for the job, L-Arginine, is the one that barely works. Arginine is the direct raw material your body turns into nitric oxide, so on paper it should be king. Except when you swallow it, your gut and liver destroy up to half of it before it reaches your bloodstream. You take 6 grams, and maybe 3 grams show up for work. So the smarter move turned out to be L-citrulline, usually sold as citrulline malate. Citrulline sounds like the indirect option because your body has to convert it into arginine first, but it sails through your gut untouched, gets converted later on, and ends up raising your arginine levels more than actual arginine does. The understudy outperforms the star. That's why citrulline is the pump ingredient you'll see properly dosed at 6 to 8 grams in anything serious, while arginine is mostly there to pad out the label. Then there's nitrates, usually from beetroot. Different road to the same gas, and this is the one with the endurance receipts. Dietary nitrate can shave a few % off the oxygen your muscles burn at a given effort, which means you squeeze more work out of the same tank of air. Good for the cardio and the long grinding sets, less about the visual pump. Beta-Alanine. Beta-Alanine is why your face starts itching about 10 minutes after your first scoop. That prickly, crawling tingle across your neck and cheeks, the one that makes first-timers wonder if they should be calling someone. It's harmless, and it has almost nothing to do with whether the ingredient is working. The tingle has a name, paresthesia, and it's just your nerves reacting to a big single dose. The whole thing fades within about an hour. What beta-alanine does that matters happens somewhere you can't feel at all. It slowly builds a compound called carnosine in your muscles, and carnosine works like a sponge that soaks up the acid piling up when you're grinding through a hard set. Less acid burn means a few more reps before the muscle taps out. And this is where the tingle gets properly ironic. That carnosine sponge takes 4 to 6 weeks of daily beta-alanine to fill. Like creatine, it loads slowly. So the tingle you feel on day 1 is doing precisely nothing for that day's workout. You're feeling the side effect of an ingredient whose payoff won't show up for over a month. It works best for those brutal 1 to 4 minute efforts, the kind of set that makes you question your life choices. And plenty of people who feel no tingle at all are getting the full benefit because how much you itch and how well it works were never connected in the first place. Alpha-GPC. Alpha-GPC earns its spot because of one study that produced a number nobody expected. It's a choline source, which sounds boring right up until you hear what it pulled off in a lab. Choline is what your body uses to make acetylcholine, the signal your brain fires to contract a muscle. More raw material, in theory, a cleaner signal. This is the mind-muscle connection ingredient. In that study, men who took 600 milligrams before training put up 14% more peak force on a bench press throw than the placebo group. 14% is a huge jump for a single scoop of anything. The honest catch is that the study had 7 people in it, so treat it as an interesting lead rather than settled science. That number is still a big reason Alpha-GPC keeps earning a spot in the focus and power section of ingredient labels. The stranger finding came from the same research. Alpha-GPC spiked growth hormone to 44 times above baseline, against under 3 times for placebo. Before anyone gets excited, a brief growth hormone bump from a supplement doesn't transform you into anything, and the long-term muscle effect isn't established. But it's a fun fact to sit on while you're locking in for a heavy set. Mostly people take this for the dialed-in feeling where you can feel the muscle you're working instead of just moving the weight around. L-tyrosine. L-tyrosine is the ingredient pretending to be a stimulant that isn't one at all. It won't give you energy, it won't race your heart, and if you took it by itself on a normal Tuesday, you'd probably feel nothing. So why is it in almost every pre-workout on the shelf? Because it's the raw material your brain builds its focus chemicals from, dopamine and noradrenaline. When you're stressed, cold, sleep-deprived, or grinding through something mentally punishing, your brain burns those chemicals faster than it restocks them. Hand it a pile of tyrosine to build from, and you hold your sharpness instead of falling apart. That's where the research is strongest, on people who are fried rather than people who are fresh. What the research doesn't back is tyrosine doing much for the physical side. Reviews looking specifically at exercise performance found the benefit there to be minimal. So its real job in your scoop is insurance for your head, not your muscles. On a good day, you might not notice it doing a single thing. Dragging yourself into a 6 a.m. session on 4 hours of sleep, that's the exact scenario where it earns its keep. L-Theanine. L-Theanine is the calmest thing in a product designed to make you feel unhinged. It comes from tea leaves, and it's why a cup of green tea gives you a smoother lift than a coffee carrying the same caffeine. It's in your pre-workout for one reason: to babysit the caffeine. Caffeine on its own tips a lot of people straight into jittery, anxious, heart-pounding territory, especially at the doses some of these tubs throw around. Theanine sands the edges off without killing the energy. You keep the alertness and the drive, minus the feeling that you might vibrate out of your own skin. Studies pairing the two consistently show calmer, cleaner focus than caffeine gives you alone. You'll usually see it dosed close to 1-to-1 with the caffeine, which tells you the formulators knew they'd loaded in enough stimulant to need a chaperone. Which brings us to the chaperone's whole reason for existing: caffeine. Out of every ingredient in the tub, this is the one that reliably, undeniably works. Everything else on this list is either supporting cast or a big fat maybe. Caffeine is the star, and it isn't close. You know the basics. It blocks the brain signal that makes you feel tired, so your fatigue turns itself down. But the reason it earns top billing is that it does 3 jobs at once. It gives you energy, it sharpens your focus, and it makes hard work feel easier, so the same nasty set feels less nasty while you're in it. That last one is sneaky, and it matters more than people think, because a set that feels easier is a set you push harder on. The sweet spot in the research is 3 to 6 milligrams per kilo of body weight, taken about an hour before you train. Push well past that, and you don't get more benefit. You just collect the jitters, the crash, and a resting heart rate that feels like a warning label. This is the ingredient the whole product is built around. Everything else is decorating the tree. Caffeine is the tree. Purine alkaloids. Purine alkaloids are what formulators reach for when they want more stimulant without more caffeine. They're caffeine's chemical relatives, chasing the same energy and focus, each one arriving with its own marketing angle stapled on. Viacrine, sold as T-crine, is the slow cousin. It comes from a tea leaf, feels a lot like caffeine, but takes longer to arrive and hangs around longer once it does. Its pitch is that you don't build tolerance to it the way you do with caffeine, so it doesn't stop working on you after 2 weeks. Dynamine is the cousin with the opposite personality, fast and hard-hitting and then gone, like a shot of espresso next to a slow drip. And then there's paraxanthine, which is the funniest thing on this whole list. Paraxanthine is what your liver turns caffeine into after you drink it. About 70% of the caffeine you swallow ends up as this one compound, and a big chunk of what you feel from coffee is paraxanthine doing the work backstage. So somebody looked at that and thought, why not skip the middleman and sell people the metabolite directly? It's marketed with a straight face as caffeine 2.0. You're buying the thing your own liver was about to manufacture for free, just with a cleaner feel and fewer jitters. Efficient, honestly. Osmolytes. There are 2 completely different ways to build a pump, and this trio is the second one. Betaine, taurine, and glycerol are osmolytes, which is a long word for ingredients that drag water into your muscle cells and swell them from the inside. Citrulline packs the muscle with blood. These pack the cells with water. 2 different pumps, same swole result. Glycerol is the extreme member of the group. It grabs water and refuses to let go, which is great for fullness and useful for holding hydration through long work in a hot gym where you'd otherwise dry out. Betaine is the one with the most going for it beyond appearances, a beet-derived compound with real evidence behind it for strength and power output, usually dosed around 2.5 grams. Taurine is the quiet team player. It helps with the cell hydration, it turns up in nearly every energy drink on Earth, and it does a little of everything without ever being dramatic enough to headline. Together, they're the water-based pump crew, and they're why some pre-workouts have you feeling inflated within about 15 minutes. L-Carnitine. L-Carnitine has the best job description on the label and the worst delivery. Its actual role in the body is to grab fat and shuttle it into your cells to be burned for fuel. Read that again and it sounds like exactly what you'd want in a pre-workout. A tiny forklift carrying fat straight into the furnace. The problem is your gut. When you swallow L-Carnitine, you absorb maybe 10 to 20% of the dose, and getting it to raise the carnitine levels inside your muscles is genuinely difficult. Studies suggest it takes months of consistent daily use, and it works better taken with a pile of carbs to spike insulin, because insulin is what drags it into the muscle. None of that describes 1 scoop of powder before you lift. So as an acute ingredient, the one you take today hoping for something today, L-Carnitine is mostly there to make the label look serious. It might do something over a long stretch of daily use paired with carbs. As a burn fat right now scoop, it's closer to decoration. It's the supplement equivalent of buying running shoes and immediately feeling like an athlete. Synephrine. Synephrine is in your pre-workout because the FDA banned the thing it replaced. Back in 2004, ephedra got pulled from supplements. It had been the go-to stimulant fat burner, and it was also sending people to hospital with heart problems. The industry needed a legal substitute fast, and Synephrine got the call, largely because it's chemically similar to ephedrine, the compound that had just been banned, only weaker. It comes from bitter orange, and it's a mild stimulant with a mild thermogenic effect, meaning it nudges your body into burning a few extra calories while adding to the overall buzz. If your pre-workout has a warm, slightly slightly too wired edge that the caffeine alone doesn't explain. This is often why. The catch is how it behaves in company. Stack Synephrine with a big caffeine dose, which is exactly what these products do, and you can push heart rate and blood pressure higher than either would alone. The NCAA bans it outright, so for a college athlete getting drug tested, that little fat burner in the scoop can end a season. Natural doesn't mean gentle. Yohimbine. Yohimbine is the ingredient most likely to have you calling someone from the gym parking lot convinced something is badly wrong. It comes from the bark of an African tree, and it hunts stubborn fat specifically. The fat on your lower belly, hips, and thighs that refuses to leave no matter how lean the rest of you gets is guarded by cellular brakes called alpha-2 receptors. Yohimbine cuts those brakes, which finally lets that fat get released and burned. In one study, soccer players dropped around 2% body fat over 3 weeks on it without losing muscle. On paper, dream ingredient. Then it falls apart. Yohimbine only works fasted because the moment insulin shows up, the whole effect switches off. So if you take your pre-workout after a meal, which is normal human behavior, the Yohimbine in it is disabled before it starts. And when it does work, it's a stimulant with teeth. Anxiety, racing heart, spiking blood pressure, the full fight or flight package, especially stacked on top of caffeine and synephrine. For anyone even slightly prone to anxiety, it can turn a normal session into a genuine panic attack. So the ingredient sold to torch your stubborn fat is also the one most likely to have you white-knuckling a treadmill wondering why your chest feels like that. It's in your pre-workout either way.